Hi everybody, it's Kim from Patriot Garden. I'm here in the greenhouse today, and this video is going to be about tips and tricks for taking care of your seedlings from germination to transplant. If these videos are helpful for you, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button. Leave a comment or a question below. That'll help me grow this channel, and I truly appreciate all that you've done to help me get this channel off the ground. So today I brought some marigold seedlings along with me. These marigold seedlings are growing beautifully. They have developed 4 sets of their true leaves. So we're going to talk about the different stages of a seedling from germination until it's ready to get transplanted. Now, the first thing that seedlings need is adequate light. The light for seedlings is supposed to mimic the daylight. So in choosing a light for growing your seedlings indoors, you have to consider 2 things. You have to consider the lumens, which is the brightness of the light, and the Kelvin, which is the color of the light. Now, if you were to use some really expensive grow lights, they would be based in the colors blue and red, 2 most important colors for new growth. I use shop lights in my seedling grow area. I purchased them very inexpensively at Walmart for about $15 each. Now, you want your lumens to be between 2,000 and 3,000, the correct brightness that will mimic daylight. You also want your Kelvin, which is color temperature, to be about 4,000 to 6,000. Now, the shop lights that I have at Walmart fall right into those 2 areas, but make sure that you look for that, whether you're using LED bulbs or fluorescent bulbs. You should always keep your lights about 2 to 4 inches above the height of your seedling. Now, your seedlings, while they're growing, are going through 2 phases. They're going through the phase where they create their energy, and then they're going to go through the phase where they use the energy. The creating of the energy is called photosynthesis, and that's what they need the light for. The dispersing and using of the energy is the stage called respiration. You know, when you used to tell your kids, make sure you sleep enough because that's when you grow? It's the same thing with plants. Plants are going to need that darkness in a 24-hour period to rest and take care of their respiration process, which is the distribution and using of that energy for growth. Photosynthesis is what they'll use during the day. So really just mimic what you would do for a human, about 16 hours of light and about 8 hours of dark. Now, the second thing your plants are going to need is obviously water. And there's a good way to water and there's a bad way to water. And I'll be honest, sometimes I don't follow the rules as perfectly as I should. And I do water from above once in a while. I also try to water from above and miss the plants if I can. But for the most part, I try to be good about it and water from the bottom. So if you have these trays, this is going to be good, trays with no holes in the bottom, for setting your seedlings, either your cell trays or individual pots. So fill up the tray with water, give the plants about an hour to soak up what they're going to soak up, and then remove the excess water. Especially if your seedlings are this age and there's a chance that roots are very close to the bottom, you don't want them sitting in water. Now, how do you know when they need water? Well, you can do the weigh test, right? Weigh your seedlings when you first plant them, when the soil is on the dry side, and then weigh them after you've watered them and kind of feel how much that is. If the top surface looks dry, that doesn't mean that the bottom is dry. It could mean that it's just dry on the very surface. If your plant is so dry that it's starting to pull away from the container, that's not a good thing. You want to make sure that you thoroughly water that. And if you leave your plants too long, your soil will get to the point where it won't even absorb water. So it's best to do this on a regular schedule. If you want to let the top dry out before you add water, that's probably a good thing. But keeping it moist as long as there's good airflow is not going to be a problem. And speaking of airflow, that is the third thing that your plants need. If your soil tends to stay moist, it's in an area that is humid, then the airflow is going to help keep your plants mold and fungus free. You don't want that fungus to build up, especially if your soil was not sanitized. You didn't sanitize it with boiling water so that you don't get those fungus gnats in there, which could cause your seedlings to do what's called damping off. If you see your seedlings start to tighten right at the soil and then flop over, they've been hit by a fungus or a fungus gnat. So they're pretty much done for. So keep that airflow. I keep a fan on very low just so it causes a very gentle breeze through the seedlings. What that also will do is help the seedlings to develop strength in their stem. They'll develop strength as they're being pushed from side to side. Nice little trick. Now, the last thing is food, and this is the coolest thing to me. It's because I also raise chicks. I don't hatch them, but I do buy them as chicks. And the cool thing about chicks is they will survive on what they have eaten, the nutrients from inside the shell, for about 3 days, which is why they can be sent in the mail, right? People put their chicks in the mail, they have the mail delivered. But once you hit that 3-day mark, they're going to need some sustenance. They're going to need that regular food and that regular water, because the nutrients from being inside the shell have a shelf life. They're only going to last for so long. Seedlings are the same way. When seedlings germinate, there are 2 leaves within that seedling called cotyledons. And cotyledons are what we call the first leaves. Now, those leaves are born, or they come out of the seed, with the ability to keep that seedling nourished until the second set of leaves come. Those second set of leaves are called the true leaves. Those true leaves often show you the personality of the plant, right? That's when you know that it's a tomato or a marigold, because the first set of leaves looks like a generic leaf, but it's those second sets that give that plant its identity. It's the second leaves that also tell you that it's time to start supplementing with a weak fertilizer. Now, I sanitize my seed starting mix with some boiling water. While that takes care of fungus gnats, that also strips it of any good bacteria. So you can't really use a hard, dry fertilizer, because there's no bacteria or very little bacteria in seed starting mix. So there's nothing to really break that down. So you really need to use a water-soluble fertilizer. I happen to use fish fertilizer. It is a little stinky, but anything will do. Just remember not to use it at full strength. I would even start at quarter strength for the first time you feed them. And then about every 2 weeks, make sure that they have a little bit of food. Now, your seedlings are going to be indoors for quite some time. I mean, I start my tomatoes 8 to 10 weeks before I put them out. And then, of course, if you have a batch of bad weather, then you're going to be waiting even longer to put them out. So you always have to be prepared to move your seedlings up to the next size pot. So that's what we're going to do today. I sowed these marigolds pretty thickly in this pot, and I'm going to gently tease these apart and put them into some Dixie cups, paper cups that have some drainage holes built into them. It's going to be easy for me to cut that cup off the seedling when I go to transplant, and I won't really give that seedling a hard time. Now, when you're potting up, remember that you need to give your plant a little chance to rest. Every time you do something different to your plant, it's going to cause a little bit of stress. So when you're transplanting, of course, you want to have hardened them off, which we'll talk about in the next video when I start bringing the bulk of my seedlings up to put in the ground. That's kind of, giving them an idea of what it's like outside. But even in your seed starting station, when you move from one pot to another, you want to give that plant a little time to just rest. So I'm going to pot these up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them outside of the grow light. I'm just going to let them have 24 to 36 hours of just rest on the potting table. So we're going to go ahead and pot these up, and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so I'm going to be very gentle when I push these seedlings out. I'm just going to kind of push from the bottom. Look how healthy that is. That's a beautiful root system. All right, now I want to be very gentle when I tease these apart. So I'm just going to kind of rub it between my hands and kind of get the soil to loosen up. Maybe drop a little soil underneath. And I'm just going to keep doing this very gently and start pulling these seedlings apart. I don't want to ruin them. I don't want to overly stress them, but they're coming apart quite nicely. And I'm just going to kind of open this up and see where a natural splitting site is, and be very gentle with those roots. Now, I would like to put one plant in each pot, so I'm going to try to get them separated, and if I can't, I'll keep 2 in there. If it means that the health of the plant is going to be compromised, I'll just do that. So now look at that beautiful root system in that plant. Now I'm going to take the cup. Now this is regular seed starting soil. I haven't changed up my formula ever. I'm going to kind of do what we do when we make chocolate, right? When you're making chocolates, just draw that soil up and create a pocket. And then I'm going to gently drop that root in there and be very kind to it. And then I will cover that root with soil and pack it in gently. I don't want to harm that plant at all. And there you go. It's ready for another couple of weeks, maybe even 3 weeks of growth, and keeping it fed and watered, and then to go right in the garden. I'm going to keep going with this procedure until I get as many of these little guys as I can, all safely repotted and in their new homes so that they can grow some more. Let's tease these apart very gently so that we can see if we can get them. If they're too difficult, I may just plant them together. There we go. Beautiful root system, ready to go. I'll just put that soil around and then gently shake in some soil and pat it down gently, and another one ready to go. I'm going to keep going till I have them all potted. I probably should address the question of sowing seeds thickly to begin with. If you're a brand new gardener, I wouldn't sow any more than 1 seed per container, because then transplanting would be a breeze, right? Because you could take this out of whatever cell it was in with its entire root ball intact and then just put it in the larger container. You wouldn't have to attempt this. I mean, feel free to. It's really not, there's not any rocket science to it. You can do this, but if you feel insecure about doing it and you think maybe you're going to damage your plants, then just sow 1 seed per cell. I think why people sow more than 1 per cell is to hedge against bad germination. For the first time this year, I sowed my tomato seeds super thickly, so I'm going to be doing this process for the first time with tomatoes, and I know how delicate that can be. Okay, so we actually did well. I ended up with 8 marigold plants that are going to fill out my garden nicely. They look nice and healthy. Now, the last thing is when you plant sort of large seedlings, and you may have seen in the beginning of the video, I use these skewers to create a stake for my plants. These little marigold babies don't need them, but those larger sunflowers needed a little bit of a stake, so these are great for that purpose. So that's it for today. We're going to have another video this weekend about transplanting into the garden. So I hope this video was helpful to you, and I will see you next time. Happy gardening, everybody.